As part of my series of videos on personal productivity, time management, and getting organized, today I'm going to be talking about prioritizing with GTD and the Eisenhower Matrix. If you don't know what GTD is, it stands for Getting Things Done, which is a great book by David Allen. The book is called Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. If you haven't read that book, you should check it out. So there's really 4 steps of prioritizing with getting things done. And your goal here is really to work out what tasks should you work on next. You've got a list of things to do. You want to whittle it down and figure out what's the most appropriate task for you to work on now that's going to make you the most productive. There's 4 steps here, and the goal is to start at the first one, context, then go to time available, energy available, and then priority. And with each of those series of steps, you're eliminating tasks which are inappropriate for you to work on now. And then you end up with a very small list to pick from at the end of this. So the first of those steps is context. And you can think about context in different ways. A very common way to think about context is where you are. A lot of people use GTD both for their work tasks and their home tasks. So it's very common to have context associated with those tasks in your to-do list of work or home. But you could have other ones, like maybe you're out and about running errands, or in your yard, or your parents' house, or something like that. So only depending on where you are right now, if I'm at work, I'm only going to look at tasks in my list which have a context associated with them of work. Similarly, you want to think about what tools you have available to you right now. If it's something that you can do on your laptop or on your phone, or maybe with some other piece of software, you can only work on appropriate tasks in your list that have the tools that you have with you right now. Also, you may want to think about context in terms of who you are with. So maybe you keep a list of things you need to talk about with your boss, and a list of actions to do with your boss that you need to discuss with him. And you can use context associated with actions to bring up that list of things when you're with that person. Once you've figured out your context and you've eliminated a bunch of your tasks by determining that context, you can now look at the time you have available. So maybe you only have a 5-minute slot. Maybe you've got a half-hour gap between meetings. Maybe you've got a big gap of 4 hours. You've got an entire morning where you could really focus on something. So you want to try and fill up that gap with whatever's going to give you the most productive work in that time. So if there's a task which is going to take a few hours for you to complete, but you've only got a half-hour slot, you're probably not going to work on that right now. You don't want to stop halfway through it. So you can eliminate that one and only look at the ones that are a half hour or less. Once you've eliminated tasks based on your time available, you now look at the energy you have available. And I like to think about this in terms of deep work and shallow work. So deep work is actually another book I really recommend called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And he defines deep work as the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. So if you feel like you have the energy to do a task like that, then you should pick tasks to work on that are deep. But if you don't, and often we don't, maybe it's the end of the day, it's a Friday, you don't have the energy to really get into that, then you can look at tasks which are going to be shallow. They're much easier, you need less focus. So maybe things like answering some email or making a phone call might be shallow tasks. Once you've eliminated tasks based on your energy, now you can actually look at priority. So this video is about prioritizing, but it's only on step 4 that we're really actually looking at priority. You've eliminated a bunch of other tasks that are really inappropriate for you to work on right now. One way to think about priority is to think about whether something is urgent, and that's how quickly it's needed, versus its importance. Like, is this thing really needed, or is it not that important? And a lot of people kind of mix those up and get confused when they think about priority. The Eisenhower Matrix, this is a picture here of Dwight Eisenhower, former president of the US. He used to think about urgency versus importance, and he came up with this Eisenhower Matrix. And this is how most people view an Eisenhower Matrix. And as you can see, you kind of split things into quadrants as to whether things are urgent or not urgent, and important and not important. Without going into detail on that one, I'm going to show you a different version of this that I created that has a little more detail in there. So as you can see along the bottom, it's almost a scale of when is this needed. This is the urgency, all the way from maybe never, sometimes, to it's needed soon, and it's needed right now. And then the y-axis is whether it's a task that's really required or not. Everything from it's not really required, it's kind of required, yes, it's required, oh yeah, it's for sure required. Again, splitting into quadrants. Things that are for sure needed now should absolutely be your main focus. You should do it now. It's kind of a crisis. If you have something that's needed sometime, maybe never, but it's needed for sure, and it is required, a good thing to do that is to schedule it. So put it on your calendar, block off some time on your calendar, make sure you get it done soon, but depending on the importance of it, as to how soon, but you can schedule it onto your calendar. Then the tasks which are needed quickly but aren't really that important, if you are able to, you can delegate those tasks. If you don't have the ability to delegate them, you can maybe group them together and do a bunch of them together, like make a bunch of phone calls one after another. And maybe you could schedule these kind of tasks as well. The ones which aren't really needed, and even if they are needed, they're not needed soon, if possible, scrap them, delete them, you don't care about them. If you think you might need them sometime, then again, you might be able to delegate or schedule some of those for the future, or at least put it on another list, a kind of someday maybe list of we might need this one day. So that's how we think about prioritizing within getting things done. These are the 4 steps defined within GTD for prioritizing. The Eisenhower Matrix within step 4 is something that I like to add in there as the way to do that prioritization within that step 4. And that's all I have to cover today. Thanks for watching the video.